Welcome back to A Look in the Mirror. I am Ben here with Brian and Maggie to talk about episode 4 of season 7 of Black Mirror, Plaything. And, we'll get into the details, but for this episode, I went through kind of a roller coaster, or like the first 20 minutes or so. I was like, this is incredible. I love this. And then by the end, I was like, oh my God, they just did Roko's basilisk. That's really stupid. And I didn't really know how to feel about the episode as a whole after. So, maybe you guys can convince me one way or the other here. Brian, what were your kind of first level thoughts here on this episode?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked that we went back to the well of Bandersnatch. If only for what's that actor's name? Will something, right?
Yeah.
Only for him to be like, I'm actually hot. Everybody said I was ugly. Lassa, I just need to make clear I'm very hot. So
I always believed it. I always believed it.
Put something like that. I don't know. But I'm glad he had a chance to come back and be like, my hair, very nice now. I got ripped because of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, please stop being mean to me, everyone online. But I like, and I think this was interesting in terms of like the idea of making artificial life and, how people definitely would, people treat even video game characters that aren't alive differently. Some people are like, I can't really ever play a bad playthrough. I think that's like 70% of people are like, I'm not going to go out of my way to be like an asshole to these NPCs. And then like another 30% of people are like, they're not real at all. So I don't give a shit. And yeah, like you said, Ben, by going that route at the end, it was like, okay, yeah, fine. It kind of felt like a little out of left field at the very end, but I think I enjoyed it mostly.
I have to say, Ben, I think I had almost the exact opposite reaction to you. I was fairly bored with it. Not bored, I would say, but I was fairly disinterested in the beginning. I was found it amusing, the references to Bandersnatch, and the initial setup. I obviously made the very quick connection to like thinking about Sims and referring to Brian of like how many people would actually torture those thronglets, how many people actually take the ladders out of the Sims pool, right? Like, okay, we do this is fine. There was no new commentary, and it wasn't near until the end, and you're kind of realizing it builds up to where it's going to go with what's going to happen at the very end, and there's this eerie feeling of what's going to happen to humanity. You don't exactly know, but some of it's better coming up. I did tend to like it a little bit better at the end. I was surprised and interested, but I also will admit that I did not know about the Roko's basilisk until after the episode, and realizing after looking into it a little bit more, I'm like, okay, I can get the mixed feelings about this one, for that one, for the simplicity of it. But I enjoyed it by the end. I thought it was really interesting. I had a very pessimistic view of the end, but I'll be curious to hear your guys' opinion about it first before I say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the implication for me, right, based off of the ties in with Roko's basilisk, is that the thronglets essentially are going to enslave humanity.
We're the playthings at the end, right?
Yeah. So humanity becomes the playthings of the thronglets. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, because I am familiar with Roko's basilisk and I think it's pretty stupid. It kind of just created a bad taste in my mouth just from that. And maybe if I wasn't terminally online, I would not have as strong of a negative feedback to that specific part of the episode. When we have Will Poulter's character showing Cameron, young Cameron, the band or the thronglets game for the first time in the office, and kind of explaining his mentality around why does it have to be a point if the game, well, they're just living, like, games are, every game is about violence, and like kind of going through that speech and that dialogue back and forth. Like, I really enjoyed that scene, and I thought I was excited to see kind of what the setup was, because I knew there was going to be some kind of like, switch flipped at a certain point. And yeah, for me, the 2 points where I started rolling my eyes was when Cameron came into the office to write his like op-ed on the game, and he leaves, and there's like the basilisk on the Word document, and then obviously at the very end, that was when I kind of like was like, oh, I see what's going on here.
Yeah, maybe. I thought I was online a little bit, but I definitely wasn't familiar again with the basilisk. To me, what I thought of immediately, and I'm realizing now that's also probably an example of Roko's basilisk, is the short story I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream. The super AI that ended humanity, except for like his last fight that he just like continuously tortured for like the end of universe. And I love that short story. I think it's very interesting. It's very great. And that's what my comparison to this, where the development of this cute little video game in the end turns evil. And, the question is, was it always going to be like this, or was it only because of his exposure to the wickedness, the evilness that his friend exposed to them? I like thinking about, that to me was more so when I got a little bit more into the episode, was considering, what were the Thronglet's intentions? How did that change over time? And, then what it resulted to in the end of the episode. So I was a little bit more excited and interested about that. But again, I didn't know too much about the Roko basilisk until afterwards.
Yeah, and I think, it's back to like Skynet. It's back to like any kind of AI where it's like eventually the AI will figure out the only way to like ensure that it survives long term is to take humans out, because we'll, be like his friend Lump and get, kill the, thronglets, or, erase the AI in some way. So, I think it's stuff that we've seen before in a lot of different stuff. But I did still enjoy it for what it was.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts are on Lump as a character? Because I think he was a really I don't know whether we're supposed to feel bad for Lump.
I think we are.
No, I think Lump is, supposed to just be like, here's what's wrong with humanity in a sense, or things like that. It's supposed to like represent a wickedness. Like, he's very two-dimensional, right? His first instinct when seeing these cute little throngs is just to kill them. I mean, I think, in referring to Brian earlier, when you're talking about that, like, 70% of people like wouldn't do anything, this 30% who would, he's supposed to just like represent those people who would jump right in, kill the throngs, and call it a day. Yeah, I didn't really have much thought about Lump as a character other than that.
Yeah, it's actually 80%. I was wrong. 80% of players pick like the good path in games, which, sucks for the people who spend all the time crafting the narrative for the evil playthroughs. Like 80% of people never see that. But I think it's also funny that like those particular thronglets will just, they've met 2 people in their entire life, and one was like a horrifically sadistic person and one was like a nice person. So they have like a very warped, like, like half of people must be this horrible and half of people are probably pretty nice.
Well, I think if that was the case though, right, then like if it was only like 50-50, would that mean that they would have to like, mind enslave humanity? Because I don't know. I feel like then like even like a Thanos style like situation would probably be at least like more on paper kind of a rational approach. Like couldn't they like scan the brains of everybody and be like, oh, this person is a sadistic sociopath and this person is like perfectly normal and is not going to like kill people for fun.
Or get the game out there to everybody, and then whoever like plays in a sadistic manner, they're on the list, and whoever plays nice, they can
it would be kind of like Hated in the Nation, right? Where like
exactly.
Like in that case, the social media like hashtag with like putting people on a list to be like, okay, this is a bad person that needs to get killed. And so that's right. You release the video game, and then anybody who kills them, like like lumped together, like how people do at The Sims, and they go on the lists and they become thronglet slaves when the thronglets take over.
I think at the end, so following other people's reviews online, I think I'm in the small minority, but I, at the end of the episode, believed that the thronglets just killed everybody at the end. That's how I interpret it, other than Cameron, and there's that last scene where Cameron's obviously reaching out to pick up the detective. And I think to me, that was more of a commentary of like Cameron as the plaything and his delusion. He believed the thronglets and they were trying to create this more perfect society, not realize that he was just like their plaything to kill humanity. And, the throngs wanted that because other than Cameron, their only influence of people were this really negative thing. And so they just wanted to get rid of them completely. And so I think, to me, this wasn't necessarily an episode about like the throngs and like an AI sort of things. It was more of like human manipulation, how easily that can be, more of like the plaything that Cameron was. And that's why I was like a little bit more interested to it. But I believe they were all dead at the end.
Be interesting. It would be hard to stay operational though, right?
Yeah.
They killed all humans.
Yeah. Cameron is like what, like in his 60s at least, like, like they got maybe like a good like 10-15 years left. Like I don't know. I feel like mind enslaving humanity is definitely and then like turning them into an extension of the throng that would help kind of turn humanity's goal into building a larger server space for thronglets to survive. Like that to me makes more sense. I feel like they wouldn't have spent like 40 years manipulating Cameron into helping them grow, only to be like, okay, we're doing this only so that we can do like a murder suicide of humanity.
But I think the way I thought about that too, because I agree. It was like that does seem like suicide in the throngs. And then I just, think about like these little things are only also 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily thinking of them as like having that foresight or so. And to them, they just wanted to get rid of the evil, the evil that was the rest of humanity other than Cameron. But I've come to see and agree that that does seem a little silly on their part. But I'm sticking with my theory. I think they killed everybody.
I mean, if you're like mind enslaved by an AI video game, like you might as well be dead, right? Like,
and like thinking about the throngs, and all they know at this point is to like build, which they do, and to kill. That's like all they know what to do right now. And then the few like caring moments that Cameron showed them, that's all they know how to do. They know how to build and they know how to kill. So why not just do that?
Yeah, I think, anyone who's deaf or like who lives in the woods is going to be in a real like tricky situation, like post-apocalyptic, invasion of the body snatchers type world,
Yeah.
The sequel. That's the sequel episode where they have to go and destroy all the servers, make an EMP bomb for the whole world.
The one guy who was camping with no technology. he comes home and like all of his neighbors are like AI drones.
Yep.
We're like the deaf people too, and they don't even like realize, and maybe nothing like happened. They're just like, what? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, I guess I figured it was more than like a sound. It was more like a vibration.
Maybe. Oh, true. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it would still like vibrate your neurons or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does happen if there's ever was it like those electrical storms? Like, what if that hits Earth and
Mhm.
the stronglings all die, and
Yeah.
then humans are just like, that was weird. That was,
I mean, I guess you could say that about like the setup for like the Matrix too, right? Like, I mean, it's the same kind of concept where like AI surpasses humans, and then like, okay, we're just going to use humanity as like a, the same way that humanity uses other animals, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. I do wish that they showed the thronglets doing more than just like running around.
Yeah,
You
and
know, like
making sounds. Boop, bop,
making
beep,
sounds.
bop.
Yeah. What do they want? Like, that's all they
Why
want
do they need to want
around
anything?
forever.
I mean, isn't that the point? Is they don't want anything though either? Like, what's the end goal? Does it have to have an end goal? I don't know.
They just want to coexist in peace with their fellow throng.
Or death.
I guess that's good. My like whole interest, is like, if you're gonna have an AI society or AI life, like their life within the computer is the same, as our life is in real life, the same richness, because to them, they don't know anything else. Like, I'd like to see them build a society, or like, like, I don't know. The fact that they just like run around, is there free will within the throng? Are they a hive mind? What is happening here?
Oh, we are throng. Isn't that they're all one thing? I mean, technically, they all came from the same throng, right?
The
Like
original,
it was
yeah.
one little dude.
Is there a hierarchy in the throng in that way? Are there elders?
I
need the world building of the throng.
I made the assumption too that the moment that Cameron operated on himself and created the system for the throngs to update to him, like, to me, almost like Cameron was pretty much dead from that point, right? Like,
that's
at
what
that
RFK
point, it was just a throng.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? Like, in terms of like, what is the throng's experience? Like, that's kind of like why I assumed that they were just turning humanity into like a vessel, like a slave vessel for them, because that's kind of like how that's like the undertones of what Cameron was describing at the end, which is basically like, I drilled into my head so that they could go into my head and merge with me, so that we could become better, right? But from like the throng's perspective, they, I think, perceive the throng to be the superior like organism, or whatever you want to call it, species, and so the merging of the throng and humanity would be like basically elements of the throng kind of taking over each individual human's like body and mind in that way, and then just like experiencing the world through them. So that to me was how I read the next step to be, and that's why I assumed that, combined with like the way, because of the ties with Roko's basilisk, and like that's about AI surpassing humanity and then enslaving humanity. Like, that's kind of the read that I got for like what the throng's next steps were.
Fair. And one thing like I had considered, and this was, before I knew about basilisk and what that meant about AI and things like that, was, how necessarily like are we rely on the fact that like what everything is Cameron is saying is true. You know, we're talking about a man who's been on LSD for like 40 years now at this point. And, you know, what's not to say that maybe at the end of the day, like when we've been saying this whole time, like he's the plaything, he's been manipulating, he's been controlled by these thronglets, but we don't really ever see anyone else interaction with these thronglets. So maybe like I had considered for a part, like what if it's Cameron that's like, you know, saying all this, he's saying this is the throngs are telling him to do this, the throngs are through him, he's gaining this confidence, but like this is a man who's also just again been on LSD for so long. How do we know that that's not just the delusions of a man who at some point wanted to do something at the end to, for me again, think kill humanity, or enslave them potentially, things like that. So I also had thought about that too as well. We don't know, or again, we didn't necessarily know, or I didn't know how strong the Thronglets AI was. So I had thought about that too a little bit.
Yeah, we don't know because we never even see what they're saying. We only see him interpreting, you know, what they're saying and buying stuff. Also, where does he get his money? How's that happening? How does he have every new console every time?
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking that too. Like, yeah, I don't
If
know.
he was like a founder of like IGN or something, maybe he could have cashed out. But it seems like he was just a writer for a game magazine in the 90s, which, you know, from what I see, I don't think many of those people are super rich these days. They're all pretty either working class, still being writers, or have moved on to doing other stuff, you know?
Yeah, I don't know how he makes money.
No. And on purpose is that theory too. I don't know what the Roko basilisk is and things like that. I don't think it's like a super viable, but I do think we need to acknowledge that this is the man who's been delusional for 40 plus years. So who knows exactly what is true and what's not.
Yeah. I guess like the one thing that would lean me towards, well, I don't know if this is like a fully indicative, but Will Poulter's character, the Bandersnatch character, he also, I think, realized that the thronglets were going to be a danger to humanity pretty quickly early on, and then had another like mental breakdown and then deleted them, or tried to, I guess, delete all of them. And
sorry, keep going. Ben.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would be, I guess, another indication that like the Throng is like, you know, actually a real danger and is more in control. But again, that also is whether or not you consider Will Poulter's character's evaluation of reality to be believable.
That's what I was gonna say, because I don't think so.
Well, one person's crazy is another person's genius, you know?
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, and I wonder too if like he or the Throng manipulated him to create the second version so that like, okay, maybe if he stops, you know, developing us, we'll live on in someone else, and like manipulated him to bring in this like particularly, you know, weak individual that the read about and knew that he could potentially be manipulated in this way. I don't know. Are there more layers to it, or am I just kind of like getting too caught up in stuff?
I think you're onto something, because doesn't he say when he first when Cameron first meets Will Poulter's character, you know, doesn't Will say something along the lines of like, "Oh, you're perfect for this because you are like weak and unassuming and not like the rest of the writers out there." So, you know, the idea that the Thronglets did choose Cameron specifically because he was so easy to manipulate, I see it. Absolutely.
A little bit of have you guys seen Ex Machina?
I have not, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. Well, the character has a similar thing where he thinks like he just kind of happened into a situation, but then it turns out it's like, no, you were particularly chosen because of, you know, all this stuff. I don't know. That could be something. I don't know if it is. Could be though. where they lost confidence in their creator to carry out what they needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, talking about going back to like what Maggie said, unreliable narrators, where this entire story is essentially being told to us by Cameron. Like even the events in the past are actually like a filtration of the story that Cameron is telling the the detectives in the interrogation room in like the near future, and so it's really like hard to know how accurate anything that happens in the episode is for that reason, because we're just assuming, like we're basically just like listening to a mentally unstable guy on a lot of drugs tell a story from years ago, and trying to decide how much of it we care to believe, or like whether like we want to buy fully in.
I think I want to like touch base too about the detective and the psychologist characters themselves too, because the interrogation scene I thought was really interesting, because on one hand you have this overly aggressive detective, like that guy was doing way too much for this investigation, to the point where you're why is he so aggressive, like why is this, and maybe it's just how he's written or whoever, and then on the other hand you have this psychologist who was a little bit more open, has a little bit more humanity within her, and I thought that within that interrogation itself, it almost felt, and this is big thinking, like too much thinking in my part, but like it was almost like when thinking about like the good side of humanity and the bad side of humanity, having this conversation with the thronglets, with these like this AI basilisk, evil entity and stuff like that, it almost felt like maybe that could have been like the last chance for humanity to try to save itself, to not be enslaved by the thronglets. Maybe if the detective had let the psychologist, talk to him a little bit more, if they had let him do things a little bit easier, maybe he wasn't so aggressive going against him. I thought that was like a kind of like an interesting point right there. I feel like things could have happened differently, even if they had just let them ask him like, what's this drawing, like what is it that you're drawing, and Cameron would have been like, oh, this is for the thronglets like to take over the computer system, and they could have changed that. And so I was like really interested in all those interactions of those characters and what they represented potentially.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, in Bandersnatch, what was Will Poulter's character's ultimate fate when you guys played it?
Well, I played it through like 2 or 3 times, I think. I think that I think I got like the best ending I got was like a neutral ending. I think it was like a train ending, something like that. I can't remember. It's been years since I played Bandersnatch, so.
And this is the moment where I admit, I didn't like Bandersnatch when it first came out. I was kind of not into the interactive storiness of it. And it wasn't until more recently I went back to it and kind of played through it. I got the first time, I think I got where it was Colin's like girlfriend when like jumping off of the building, and I forget like where that ending led to, with like the
he
first
gets like
time.
arrested, I think, for like giving her drugs.
Yes, yeah. So that was my first one. I got, and then the second time I only really played it twice. The second time I got the train ending, like the where they all die in the train at the end. So I didn't really have much with Colin directly.
Yeah, for me, the first time he jumped off the balcony, and that was the only one I kind of remembered until you were just talking about the girlfriend, and then I was like, oh yeah, I did play it where the girlfriend jumped and he got arrested. So to me, I was like, oh, this guy's dead. How's he showing up again? What is this? But obviously, like, Bandersnatch is not necessarily for any loose canon of the Black Mirror universe, or it's a continuation of whatever the Bandersnatch universe is, where he just doesn't die or get arrested.
Yeah, I mean, like, I liked Bandersnatch in theory. I thought the execution, like, I mean, I guess for like a first kind of pass at something like that, like, I know, like, obviously, like, Telltale games and stuff like that exist, like The Wolf Among Us and all these kind of games. Like, there's a long, there's a long history of, like, these kind of like decision-making style, like, decision tree games, but kind of incorporating that into a more formal TV show. I guess for a first pass, I think it was all right. And there was, like, obviously the meta aspects to it. For the game itself was also like about, like, branching decision making and, like, the endless repercussions of certain actions, and those decisions having ripple effects. But yeah, I think, like, as an experience, I was kind of on it.
It was the experience for me the first time around. It was a little too clunky. It was a little too slow, in my opinion. So when I first went into it, I was like, I played around with it like a smidge. It didn't really finish it. But it wasn't until later, and I was like, you know what, that was actually kind of cool for a first per se of its kind. And it wasn't really the first. There was other things, interactive things before that, but on the scale that it was on Netflix, the first of its kind, I was like, yeah, okay, I can give it a little bit more respect. It was kind of cool, but Bandersnatch, it's not my favorite Black Mirror cinematic thing.
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I think Bandersnatch is, like, not super highly regarded. Yeah, it's a cool gimmick though, and like
it is. And I think, like, what I liked about Plaything is, they're kind of leaning more into that, and that, like, who is the real Plaything. And Bandersnatch, I think there was an ending I read upon about how it referred to you, like, the Netflix view itself, right? And how, like, you're acting like the overarching player of this, and you're controlling everything, and, like, why would you make decisions? And I think Plaything kind of played into that a little bit more, as well as when given the opportunity to control life of the thronglets, like, what would humanity do? And two sides of the same coin, right? Bandersnatch and Plaything. So
yeah, no, I think it was interesting. It was a cool first attempt at it, but Telltale games probably do it better. And then if you want, like, the mixture of gaming and, like, real stuff, that game Quantum Break by Remedy was, like, very much in the same vein, and I think does it better than Bandersnatch. But it was my hope that was going to be, like, the beginning of something more. But it feels like Netflix has moved away from that entirely. They did, like, an episode of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt with that technology, and I may have been it for it.
And
they've gotten rid of all their game division by now. Yeah. So,
well, there is when I went on Netflix the other day, there was, like, a game that popped up immediately. Let me see if I can see it. This Cozy Grove game.
I thought you were going to talk about Netflix has the Throng game, and I was going to ask if any of you guys had played it.
I have not. No.
I have not.
Yeah, because there is, like, an entire game section on Netflix, and, like, when you first open Netflix, like, for me right now at least, like, it offers this, like, Cozy Grove game, which looks to be some kind of, like, like 2D style, like, Stardew Valley kind of vibes, where you're, like, collecting things and farming and stuff like that. You're like a Girl Scout or something.
Cute.
Yeah, they weren't going to, like, really invest in gaming at one point,
Mhm.
but ultimately didn't come to fruition. It's very interesting that they made a game. I might have to try this out now. I didn't realize that.
It's interesting. So I haven't played it myself, but I've seen others played it. And I think it's kind of interesting. I looked into a little bit of like the history of it too, because I was curious. And so, the thronglet game and the episode Playthings were kind of co-produced at the same time. The game itself was more so like thought of first. And I think they originally wanted to like release it as like a Black Mirror game, and they wanted it to be more of like the commentary of like the whole idea of playthings and stuff like that, but within the game itself. But then I guess they decided to make the episode of it as well, and so they kind of fed off each other, and that's how we got Plaything. And the gameplay seems it's basic. It's thronglets. It's grow them and you take care of them. You could choose to harm them. You can choose not to harm them. It's very player choice. But throughout, there's like many like moral, ethical questions that I brought up. Like there was one I saw of the thronglets where like, should we, use like bones of our dead thronglets in order to like build houses to house us or something like that? And, depending on how you choose, you would get different endings. And I don't want to get into too much of like different endings if you're curious about playing, but it seemed a little too on the nose of what this episode's like trying to do in like the nicest way possible.
Maybe we'll all play it and do an episode just on the Thronglets game.
We could do a let's play of Thronglets.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think is it only on mobile?
It's on iOS and you need a Netflix account.
Okay.
Yeah, you can with Mac. You can like mirror.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, might be a way to do it. So yeah, stay tuned for that. See if we all stream playing a Thronglets game. But yeah. Anything else for this one that you guys want to talk about?
No, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to. I haven't watched Eulogy or USS Callister 2 yet, so I'm looking forward to watching those. I've heard, everything I've seen about this season, like the vast majority of the like positivity that I've seen has been about Eulogy. So I'm very excited to see that episode. That seems very well regarded.
So far, I mean, of the 4 episodes we saw, honestly, I love Plaything. I thought it was interesting just for the amount of different possibilities and thoughts that I've had about it. Of all the 4 episodes we've seen, this is probably the one I've just thought about the most, just because I was curious about it. And again, I came up with a gazillion one different theories about it, and some of them played out and some of them didn't. And so, thinking ahead of Eulogy and USS Callister sequel, I'm looking forward to those 2. I've also heard good things about both of those episodes. I'm very excited to see those.
Yeah, I was disappointed because I had heard that they were going to make a USS Callister show, like a spinoff, and then it seemed like that was dead. But maybe we'll get the ball rolling on that again if people like this episode. We'll see. Knock off Star Trek, but that could be fun.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, because I didn't love the first USS Callister.
Yeah.
Oh wow. But I didn't love it because I didn't like the ending. Mostly, I mean, I thought like I had other issues with it, but the ending for me was like the thing that made me not like it. So maybe this will either change my opinion depending on like where it goes, or like make me dislike it more. We'll see. But I know it's not like a common opinion, so I'm glad to see Maggie's raising her hand. So I'm not going to be like the only one.
That's good. Yeah,
on USS Callister.
We have very similar wavelengths.
I think we look for very similar things on the in the show and kind of roll our eyes at very similar things.
Yes. Yeah, USS Callister was not my favorite.
Yeah.
very low on my list, to be honest, of the episodes as a whole. But I am mildly curious of the sequel. More so, if anything, just as Black Mirror's first official sequel to an episode. I am curious of what that means and what will become of that. I personally am not a fan of the idea of Black Mirror starting to do sequels, but we can talk a little bit more about that when we actually watch USS Callister. So, sequel.
Yeah, it's always been in a weird, like, even with this episode, where it's like, is it a sequel to Bandersnatch, or does it just have like one character? Does Bandersnatch even exist within the, canon or very, very loose canon of Black Mirror? It almost feels like there's like each episode is its own circle, and then every other episode like Venn diagrams on other episodes, where it's like, the Barney's Chicken Place is in a few episodes, and we see the lollipop from USS Callister, and was it Black Museum? Was that the name of that episode?
Yeah, Black Museum has a bunch of Easter eggs. Yeah,
where it's like, is this the same? Even the episode today where they had the or the episode we covered with the thing with the AI movie where they put the thing on the side of the head is very much like USS Callister. Where it's like, is that the same technology and complete history of us?
The entire history of you.
Yeah. Where it's like that technology's in that. Is it the same? The cookies that go, across. Like, I don't think there's one through line, but there is like maybe these alternate branching paths that have like the shared technology.
And then you also have like common people, like you had Amanda teaching a class on the bees that were used in Hated Animation, right? There's like a lot of overlap.
There's a lot of
that. Yeah, that's a world where maybe it didn't go the same way.
Yeah. And we kind of touched a bit about this when we talked about it with Bed Noir. A little bit is okay. But I think we're approaching a line, and we're kind of getting a little too many Easter eggs per episode. And so when now we have a whole sequel, like an official sequel to not just like Plaything as a potential sequel to Bandersnatch, there's mixed feelings about it.
We'll see.
We're gonna have to see. Yeah, we're like, maybe it'll be great. Maybe you guys will actually like this one.
We'll see.
All right, Ben, anything you want to promote? Where can they find you? Floor is yours.
You can find me and Brian talking about Survivor over on the Blindsiders if you watch Survivor. May or may not cover Devil's Plan Season 2 and or The Genius UK, which are both coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm a big fan of both the Genius and Devil's Plan, which are both made by the same guy, the same production company. The Korean shows, I'm hopeful that the Genius UK is good, but my expectations are being tempered, so we'll see.
Yeah, like you said before we started recording, this episode had Doctor Who in it. The Genius UK has Doctor Who in it.
Different Doctor Who, yep.
Different Doctor Who, yeah. But also, I feel like the more popular Doctor Who, so that helps.
Yeah, I would say I think David Tennant's still probably the most popular, at least from the reboot series on. Yeah,
the fact that they brought him back to play the Doctor again in a special, I think, shows like people love him.
Yeah, I think Matt Smith also is like pretty beloved.
Yeah.
I love Matt Smith.
I like Peter. I like Peter Capaldi. I think it's good.
Yeah. Dark Horse Christopher Eccleston. Even though he outwardly hates Doctor Who and his time on the show, I do think Christopher Eccleston is one of the better actors to play that role. Watch The Leftovers, everybody. He's great in that. But yeah, Maggie, same thing. Anything you want to promote? Floor is yours.
Listen, if you agree with me and that all humanity died at the end of Plaything, please let me know that I'm not alone out there. I'm not crazy for thinking that. Please comment below.
Please let Maggie know in the comments if you agree there. As for me, main channel, we get everything. This channel, Better Radio, has all of our podcasts that Ben already talked about. And then we have a sports channel, We're Good Sports, and our nerd pop culture channel, Those Fake Nerds. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.